So below the description of the coronavirus, there's this flu pandemic vocab guide that you can use if you get confused about some of the words that are in the documents. But I'm not going to go over it now, but if you need it, it's there. So just like some previous weeks, what you're doing this week is you are answering some DBQs and then one final question at the end. There's 3 DBQs this week, which I think is one less than last week. So let's read through them together. As always, your answers should be accurate based on the document and in full sentences. And please try to put them in your own words, not copied from the document. Okay? My model answers are below in blue, and the parts where you have to write an answer are highlighted in yellow. Okay, so it's the same question for every document. The question you're answering is, based on the results of the Spanish flu above, what is one good way for the government to respond to a pandemic? Okay, we're looking for what's the best way the government should respond to a pandemic. So, what can the government, do when a pandemic hits or a deadly virus hits? So, document 1 is the model. Let's read. The most successful approaches in 1918 followed those 3 components. First, they started early, particularly before the flu infected a certain amount of people and spread rapidly. Second, they were sustained, lasting until the virus really seemed to go away and quickly redeployed or brought back if the virus came back. Third, the best approaches didn't just tell people to stay home because they could just ignore guidance and go to events, bars, church, or other big gatherings anyways, making it harder to do any of that by placing restrictions or bans on top of restriction bans helped. In practical terms, this meant advising against or prohibiting or banning just about every aspect of public life, from schools to restaurants to entertainment venues, with some exceptions for grocery stores and drugstores. This plan essentially describes flattening the curve, spreading out the rate of infection so hospitals don't get overwhelmed and are therefore better equipped to treat patients back to good health. Cities in which these plans were implemented or enforced early had peak death rates of about 50% lower than those that did not. So cities that did all these things had death rates 50% less than other cities. There is also this graph here. Okay, this graph shows the 1918 Spanish flu death rates in Philadelphia, where they did not use the plan above, and St. Louis, where they did use the plan described above. So, on the graph, on the bottom, we have the dates, right, of when the Spanish flu was happening, and on the left, we have the death rate. Okay, how many people died per 100,000 people? The darker line is Philadelphia, and the dotted line is St. Louis. So in Philadelphia, where they didn't put this plan, right, we see the death rates in late September spike up really high to about 250 people, okay, per 100,000. And then drop back down low, all right? Whereas in St. Louis, it kind of grows incrementally a little bit, right? But it never reaches above 50 people per 100,000, okay? So, based on the results of the Spanish flu, what is one good way for the government to respond to a pandemic? Well, based on the reading, I said one good way for the government to respond to a pandemic is starting restrictions early, before infection rates get too high, right? I pulled that from this first thing. First, they started early, particularly before the flu infected a certain amount of people and spread rapidly, right? I got that from right there. So now you tell me a second way that the government should respond to a pandemic based on this document. Okay? Okay. Document 2. It's the same question. All right, based on the results of the 1918 Spanish flu above, what is one good way for the government to respond to a pandemic? So let's read. Another point worth emphasizing from the research: social distancing practices have to be sustained, or lasting, continuing. As obstructive or difficult, annoying as it is that we might need to do some social distancing for months, that really might be what's necessary to save as many lives as possible. Now, when it says social distancing measures, right down here at the bottom, it tells you that means rules to keep people apart and stop the spread of a disease. Things like closing businesses, requiring masks or gloves, and advising people to stay 6 feet apart.